In some ways, the question has always been Levo or Kenevo, which one to choose. And there have been many people very forthcoming with some quite simplistic answers to this very question. Now, some people say if you want to hit the jumps and downhills, then Kenevo is the machine, whilst others say that for longer rides on varied terrain, then the Levo is the path to follow. However, whilst there are elements of truth in that statement, it's not actually that straightforward. Not on an e-mountain bike, at least, because that idea is taken from the standard and, dare I say it, old-fashioned mountain bike categorization, where 150mm by 29 is more of a trail bike, whereas 180mm travel by 27.5 is more of a gravity enduro style bike. The thing is, on a recent trip to North Wales, that actually made me think the whole idea of what actually is best for longer rides. It also made me think, why not turn a Levo into an Enduro? Or better still, why not turn a Kenevo into a Kenduro? Now, would that be the ultimate all-rounder? Hold up, let's be very clear here. Now, out of the box, in dual crown specification, the Kenevo is built for purpose. It's the chairlift and uplift killer. It's a downhill, root munching, rock scraping, flying machine. A bike with a very different personality to the Levo. But bikes, as well as people, can change. I'm not saying for 1 minute that the Levo will ever be as capable in a downhill scenario as the Kenevo. No, my question is, can the Kenevo be as much of an all-rounder as the Levo, with a little bit of grooming? Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's rewind a touch. It's interesting that when you look at trail bikes on the Specialized website, you'll see that e-bikes are very much now part of the trail category, one that includes the Levo SL, the Stump Jumper, and more importantly, the Enduro. We know that the Stumpy is 130mm travel with 140mm fork, the Evo version with 150mm travel and 160mm fork for larger sizes, and the Levo and Levo SL at 150mm travel, and of course the Enduro, the mighty Enduro at 170mm travel, a bike which they say is astonishingly fast both up and down the trail. But as we all know, we've kind of shut that argument down a while ago with the Kenevo. So this, the Kenevo at 180mm travel front and rear, can this really be a trail bike? Oh yes, it is, a bike which Specialized say is the most capable e-mountain bike in existence. I suppose you could argue that it's also one of the most capable mountain bikes in existence. Now, this bike with this fork really does fill me with confidence. And let's face it, it's a bike that can be configured in so many different ways. But that triple clamp fork up front, I really feel at home with it because, well, I guess downhill has been a big part of my life for the past 20 years. Yes, the Kenevo with a triple clamp fork makes it very much a breed of the bike parks. And on downhill, it really is the king. But you know what? I want to make this bike more enduro than bike park orientated. So time then maybe to take some inspiration and some numbers from the Specialized Enduro. So as you can see, when you compare the geometry to size S4 Enduro to a size S4 Kenevo, which is what I've got here, the bottom bracket is pretty much the same, just a 2mm difference. In terms of the wheelbase, the Kenevo is 19mm longer, which means it's going to be a little bit more stable on the descents. And of course it's going to be because it is a downhill bike park orientated bike. The reach is slightly bigger in size S4 on the Kenevo by 8mm, 495 on the Kenevo versus 485 on the Enduro. Head angle 64 on both bikes. Seat-tube angle is 76 on the Enduro versus 77 on the Kenevo, so slightly steeper, which is great for the technical hill climbs. No, the biggest difference between the two bikes is actually in the chainstay. 442 on the Enduro versus 454 on the Kenevo. So the Kenevo and the Enduro are pretty similar in terms of geometry. Yes, the Kenevo is slightly longer and a little bit lower, but remember, when you're considering the two bikes, an e-mounted bike has its own dynamic geometry needs to consider. So if you're going to be tackling those technical climbs, longer climbs, and making this bike more of an enduro bike, then I believe that a single crown fork might be a little bit better. So where do we begin then if we're thinking about transforming the Kenevo into more of a Kenduro character? Well, I'm looking at the weight differences between a Levo at 21 kilos and the Kenevo at around about 23 kilos. Now, the 700 watt hour battery in this bike makes it ideal for enduro style riding, but I'm thinking if you are just riding bike parks, then possibly two 500 watt hour batteries might be a good option, because let's face it, the difference between a 700 and a 500 watt hour battery is 685 grams, which I know it's about the weight of a full water bottle, but nevertheless is quite important. So how many other ways am I going to save weight on the Kenevo? Right, now the first stage in transforming this Kenevo, this bike park triple clamp downhill monster, into more of an enduro bike, a Kenduro, the first stage is to swap over to a single crown fork. Now the Boxer Select weighs in at 2,558 grams, whereas the Fox 38 mil stanchions obviously is 2,200 grams. And I'm also thinking about maybe swapping the coil for an air. So here we have a Fox Float X2 to complete the pairing. Now the great thing with air suspension is that you've got an adjustable spring rate, it's more progressive, it's lighter and arguably more tunable. Now obviously you can go for a Vivid Air to go on the back of the Kenevo to match the RockShox up front, but on this occasion I've gone for the Fox, so time now then to get them fitted. I do know what I'm doing. It seems to be carnage in here. Now remember, the first thing to consider if you're swapping from triple clamp to single crown is you're going to need a stem. So, crown off, fork out, always a scary moment. Now a bit of a hack here, so in a minute you're going to be cutting the single crown forks down, so probably going to be using a pipe cutter's pipe cutter, but on the top of there you've got quite a spiky thing, so that doubles up as a tool to remove the lower race on your forks. Boom. Right, well apart from a couple of toys teetering on the edge of the cot moments, I think that was pretty straightforward. Now remember, if you're going from a triple clamp to a single, you're going to need a different wheel, unless your wheel is compatible for 20mm and 15. So slotting that in there. Now I've now gone for a different wheel up front. I've actually got a Mavic E Crossmax wheel with bladed spokes. That goes in there. I'll need to adjust that lever later, but actually it's already adjusted, so that should be in line with the fork. And just going to connect up the caliper now, and I gotta say she does look pretty damn good. So got the fork on, got the shock in the lowest position, and what's the numbers on there, Jasmine?
63 degrees.
Wow, so we've lost a degree on the head angle, and 63 is not such a bad thing. So geometry numbers now, we've got a 338mm bob bracket and a 63-degree head angle, which means it could potentially be even more of a flying machine downhill. However, we've lost a bit of weight in the fork and also the shock, plus of course a new wheel set on there as well. So I can't wait to get it on the trails. And here she is, slack for those scudding descents, low for slashing it into the corners, and a steep seat-tube angle for sticking it up those technical climbs. The Kenduro, 180mm travel flying machine. Okay, so she is ready to go, and I'm sure you'll agree it's now much more Levo than ever before. In fact, in terms of angles, it's actually pretty close to the Enduro. However, the weight is obviously quite different. And there's more: the sizing, the geometry, the cornering ability, and the way it holds and responds via that new Fox shock. It really is an all-rounder. So I guess the big question now is, which one would you choose? Would you go for the Levo or the Kenduro? It's a big question, and it applies not just to the Specialized bikes, but to any other brand. As we saw in our trip to North Wales with the white bikes, the 160 versus the 180, we actually found that the 180 bike was more comfortable for those longer days out, simply because it was more squishy. But the Levo has been on some monster days out, as we did in the Alps or in Scotland. And the Kenevo has been a bike which has ruled the bike parks. But now we have a bike which at 180 mil travel can actually do anything. So it really is a big question. You know what? I really think this experiment has been a total success. The agility, the stability, and the handling on this bike really does make it a great all-rounder. Let us know what you think, and send in your pictures and upgrades that you've done to your Kenevo.